Member for St. James North.
You know, Mr. Chairman, listening to the Democratic Labour Party side today, I really say to myself, if only they had said this before the election, that we could no longer carry the weight of free tertiary education, and had come to the people really with what they felt, what may have happened at election time. But I also want to start, Mr. Chairman, by a point of agreement with the Minister of Education. I, as well, believe that those who have had the benefit of university education at the West Indies, free education, free quote unquote, need to put back into society. And not only him, the honourable member says he wears a badge. I don't have to go about wearing a badge. For the last 10 years, I have given a covenant to the University of the West Indies. There's a law prize in my name. I had determined, in fact, at first, I want a prize to the best student on law of poverty, social welfareism, and that was what my prize was for until they abolished the course. But they still continue to give it in other names. So I totally agree with the Honourable Minister in that sense. I only wish he could get his other cabinet colleagues who have had the benefit of that education to agree with us and to give back as well monetarily to the University of the West Indies. You know, a past Minister of Education, on the DLP side, Mr. Keith Simmons, he felt when he was a minister, and he said regularly that they should have a national youth service or a service whereby people put back formally. In other words, it should be a matter of compulsion, whereby people who get the benefit of this good society that, you know, we have grown up in, would put back into society, either through clubs, Lions Clubs. Some of us are members of the Rotary Clubs, Kiwanis inside this Parliament, organizations, community organizations. And maybe the time has come that we need to sit down as political leaders and see how we can formally devise a structure whereby our young adults, our adults, give back to the society. I know that under the Barbados Labour Party government, the last administration had devised a scheme whereby all secondary school students had to join a club to inculcate in children's minds, you know, the view of giving back, of joining clubs of volunteerism. And I don't know where that is right now. I haven't heard about it. As I understand it, in many schools, that is not a matter of compulsion. But if it isn't, I would want to, you know, in terms of the Honourable Minister, that he should see that that be done and that that policy be carried out. But, you know, Mr. Chairman, I also have to mention this because members on that side, especially the Honourable Member for St. James South, always speaks about, you know, calling on those with money and capacity to invest in the country. And, you know, I think he said so up to 2 days ago, all of we are one, and if we don't, we will sink together. The issue lies, as we have said, especially the Honourable Member of St. Michael South, he said it today, on the issue of credibility. Credibility. If the political directorate does not have credibility and trust of the people, they will not get people to invest. If you cannot take the words of those in political leadership, you will not be able to attract investment, whether local or foreign. And that is fundamental to this issue. And when we have a situation where the Honourable Minister of Education promised bursaries to University of the West Indies students since mid-April last year, And then in July said that it had been agreed to 3,000 bursaries at $3,000 each. And each time, of course, reacting to statements made by the Honourable Member for St. Thomas and myself as to how the students will be funded, how now you're imposing tuition fees, you expect students to go. Each time it was response to that. And then in August, application forms come out. Students given the impression throughout all of this that they will get this funding, free funding from the Ministry of Education, that the Minister of Education had been promising since April last year. And entering university on this principle, well, you know we're going to get the funding, and the University of the West Indies sensibly accommodating them, paying by month like a mortgage, $600, $700 till these bursaries come through. 1,900 people apply for these bursaries. I had some of the forms down at my constituency office that you didn't have to go down to the ministry for them because the time was short. We would take them in for you. Had to get all kind of documentation to go with these bursaries. The documentation was so confusing that by his own admission last week, the Minister of Education said that 300 of them were filled out wrong. I mean, it was so complex. Want all kind of information. But then the bursaries still don't come. In July, they were to come in a couple weeks' time. They had been agreed to, but then you hear that the Minister of Finance refused the bursaries. And the Minister of Education suddenly silent. One of the most loquacious ministers of government, not saying one word in English, Spanish, or French to the students of Barbados or to their parents on which the position with these bursaries. A breach of trust to the people of Barbados for whom he had a mandate to look after. Finally then, a couple of weeks ago, you hear about bursaries. You know, 1,600 students applied. You don't know if all of them get in. And the bursary's gone down to $1,800. You don't know if students, but the students gone. The students who wanted the bursary's gone. The University of the West Indies roll call dropped from 9,000 to just over 5,000, 40% drop. And, you know, you don't know who can get these bursaries. You don't know what the criteria is. You don't know if students at Mona campus and St. Augustine campus eligible for these bursaries as well. You know, so then when we're talking about, you know, people should invest, you know, and all of that, as the Minister of Industry speaks about all the time, you have to look at yourselves and your credibility problem and your problem with trust. The University of the West Indies, a study that they had last year, and if it isn't a document to the House, I will make it one, Mr. Chairman, the impact of the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus on the economy of Barbados. I think more, the economists and lecturer Moore, I think, might have said it, speaks about the generation of the campus of almost $87 million in foreign exchange, $89 million in 2012. This is an entity that brings in a tremendous amount of foreign exchange into this country. And it should not only be looked at as a burden, which as a financial burden and in terms of numbers and mathematics. These are real people that we're talking about and the future of our young people. I also wish to speak, Mr. Chairman, about the relationship which concerns me between the Minister of Education and the Barbados Union of Teachers. I don't know if it is because he used to be head of the union, of that union, for a few years when the Barbados Labour Party, I believe, was in office at one time. But you know, this is not good, and he needs to mend fences with a major stakeholder within his ministry rather than always criticizing it for tactics it uses and threatening it tantamount to withdrawal of labor, and it would suffer repercussions, and he doesn't know why people should fall in line. All of these I see as attempts, timid attempts to undermine the democracy of this country, because the trade union legislation brought in since around 1940 is entrenched, and these people have rights under the trade union. The issue as well of telling the media that they can't come on the school properties, and the trade union leaders to stay out on the road unless you come to do good, and instructing, writing a letter, having a letter written to the principals and to the teachers that they can't invite the media onto their property. All of this, well, the property is not the personal reserve of the Minister of Education or of the Democratic Labour Party. The property belongs to the people of Barbados. And you know, this needs to be looked at. We have the issue of national development scholarships, Mr. Chairman. Used to be 23 national development scholarships given out in the year immediately before last elections, down to now 6 or 7. In fact, we should be increasing national development scholarships now to create new expertise in new areas of economy. We should not, and we should be increasing the areas which would be considered critical for national development rather than limiting these areas. I'm concerned too, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, about other issues. We have, we have created new sixth form schools. Why aren't we creating specialist areas in these new sixth form schools rather than general areas? Why aren't we
Honourable member has 3 minutes.
Speaking about culture and sports and music? Why aren't these schools being specialist schools rather than the general schools? I accept that Foundation School, because of it, has got a Barbados Scholar, and we commend Foundation and the recipient of the Barbados Scholarship winner for that. We agree, but still, I think that area needs to be looked at. The issue, of course, yes, secondary school students. It has been mentioned earlier today. On our side, what is the policy on students who leave secondary school without any certification? What is the policy? Too many of our students, I don't know the correct figure, if it is 40%, if it is 60%, I don't know the minister. I would like him to give that figure. It's children leaving school without certification. The Honourable Member for St. Thomas has mentioned it, and the implication of what she said in her last intervention is why don't we consider moving the school leaving age to 17 or 18? You know, a previous Minister of Finance of this Barbados Labour Party in 1976-77, Sir Louis Tull, moved the school leaving age from 14 to 16, transformative, to use the word that the Honourable Member for St. George South used. And this is the fundamental issue that we're talking about. The transformative, that we have a Minister of Education who has now served longer in that position than any other previous minister. And where is the transformation, as the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke, in terms of his ministry? What will be his legacy, besides being the minister who presided over the dismantlement of free tertiary education in Barbados? We had Sir Grantley Adams, first Minister of Education in this country, starting free secondary education at 5 secondary schools. We have, of course, Sir James Trudeau bringing in now comprehensive free secondary education. We had Sir Louis Tull moving the school leaving age from 14 to 16. We have the Honourable Leader of the Opposition bringing in EduTech. What positive does the present Minister of Education have to show for his long tenure. I forgot, sir, Mr. Chairman, my constituent.
Of order, Mr.
Honourable
Chairman. I distinctly heard the honourable member misleading the chamber, because I distinctly heard him say as that Hilton Vaughan was the Minister of Education. Now today he's changed his mind. The honourable member is clearly misleading the chamber.
Honourable member, conclude and wrap up.
I almost forgot, Mr. Chairman, my constituent, Sir Lloyd Sandyford, bringing in the community college. All these ministers have made some difference positively to the issue of education in Barbados. But what I would like the President Minister to show, what has he done to make a positive difference in the lives of the people of this country? I thank you.